Hello and welcome everyone to ETEducation's Leadership Discussion Series on advancing higher education in India, brought to you in association with Coursera. I'm Yasmin Bad, I'm the editor for ETEducation, and it's a pleasure to be amongst you today. From AI-driven learning to industry-integrated curricula, institutions are being challenged to rethink their very foundation. And that's what we will dig deeper into with the two leaders that I have for this conversation who are really actively shaping this transformation. So first up, I'd like to welcome Dr. K Senthil Ganesh, who's managing trustee at RVS Educational Institutions, driving institutional transformation with a strong focus on employability and outcomes. Dr. Senthil, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Trustee, who's Senior Director at Coursera, enabling institutions globally to adopt scalable and future-ready skill-based learning models. Hi, Trustee. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Nice
Great.
to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. So today, through this conversation, we'll focus on how institutions can embed relevance, resilience, and innovation into higher education, especially in a world that is increasingly AI-driven and skills-first. So Dr. Ganesh, I'd like to come to you first. As AI becomes so integrally learn and how we work, how are you reimagining your institution for a very skills-first and AI-driven world?
Well, I think you have started with a hot topic that is not just in education, but all over the world. We're talking about AI, so there's no way that we can escape this trend that's happening, or this tsunami, I should say, that is taking over. But I think when we talk about AI, I think it's important that we actually go back and also not forget the fundamentals, because a lot of times in the heat of things, we tend to go a little overboard, thinking that AI is a panacea for all ills in the world. But unless you focus AI on the fundamentals of any, whatever business you're talking about, more so in education. So I'll start with the core teaching and learning process, which is what is the operating engine for any higher educational institution, or for that matter, any education, right? So what we are seeing is, we are seeing actually a great productivity improvement in the teaching learning process. I'll just give you one small example, and maybe in the future, as we discuss further, I'll throw some more light on that. But prior to AI, so about 70% of our academic work is in optimizing and in enhancing the teaching and learning process. So we used to spend a lot of time, effort in preparing the teaching learning materials, updating them, and integrating them with the skills, exercises, and everything. But the problem that we always had, like, content was not an issue, I think, for the past 20 years after the internet boom. Like, content, you can get content, but what was lacking was how do you actually align the content to your specific ecosystem? Because MIT has OCW, the Open Courseware content, but that is something that is pitched at a very, very high level. And then you have institutions where you have first generation learners. We have a lot of first generation learners in RVS. How do you contextualize that to the Indian system, and more so towards the first generation learners? That was a problem. Now AI is helping us solve that. Now what we are seeing is, like, our teachers and our faculty members, they are actually getting conversant. I wouldn't say that they've mastered all the tools, because as Prashasti was just telling a while ago, every week they are updating the models, and every week something or the other keeps coming. But what we are seeing is, this is actually a boon for the teachers, because now we are able to give the context to AI, and then when we prompt AI with relevant questions, it's contextualizing the teaching and learning process. More so later. Yeah.
Thank you. There are some great thoughts on how overall, the way teaching and learning happened is getting reimagined with AI becoming very, very critical. And thanks for sharing those and how your institution is kind of changing that from the very core of how education happens. That's interesting to know. But what has been the toughest shift for you? Was it curriculum? Was it faculty? Or was it, if you had to pick one?
If I have to pick one, faculty development, in my opinion, is the most difficult task, because
Yeah.
it's often when we talk about, I mean, in conferences, we conduct conferences both in RVS and then as part of CII. I'm very closely working with CII. Every conference we talk about skilling and unemployability and how educational institutions have to really come up to the level of what the industry needs, and it's always the student who's not rising up to that level. But we in RVS have a different opinion. Like, it actually it starts with me, with the managing trustee, and then the principal, and then the directors, HODs, faculty, and finally the students. So our students are the last in this chain. If all of us are not aligned, and if all of us are not thinking what we should be thinking for skill based curriculum and employability, then students are not going to rise up to that level. So faculty development is the biggest challenge, I would say, in my opinion.
Yeah. I do hear this from a lot of other leaders in the industry also, I think. And as you said, they are becoming conversant, but yet to reach that level of change that's required for this, I think that it's taking its time. But thank you for sharing that very honestly. Professor, how about you, from your vantage point of working across institutions globally? What differentiates institutions that are truly future ready from those that are still catching up?
Yasmin, who is ultimately the customer of an institution? That is a student, right? Um, Institutions that are excelling are actually listening and catering to the student needs, because today's student is aware. Today the student holds a handheld device which answers any questions that they may have. A curious bent of mind may ask more skeptical questions, and not so curious bent of mind will ask more traditional questions. But everybody gets an answer. Second thing is the heterogeneity of classrooms is more visible today than it was earlier. Earlier, tutorials, faculty as the ultimate controller of the theater that happens in a classroom, what gets learned, how it gets delivered, all that control is going away. And the heterogeneity of interests, of curiosity, of levels, of competencies is also opening up. Because now students, if they're disinterested in what happens at the university, have other ways to secure that information and find their own pathways. Now, this is a very challenging time, because what does it mean for an institution? It means demand for flexibility and personalization is peaking. There is a preference for instant feedback. There is a preference for making sure that the approach is very, very career oriented. This word of outcome based education has been floating in higher education and academia for years together. But now it's more visible because it's measurable. There's so much data floating around us that we can also measure it. This is where the institutions are now playing. If the institutions are playing here, that also means large strategic focus in putting together a policy that uses technology as the biggest enabler to deliver classrooms to the power of uniqueness of one. So if I can build my own degree, which is relevant to the career that I am seeking, this is my preference. And we surveyed students. We asked around. In India, about 87% of students use AI as part of their learning process, and they're very comfortable. On the contrary, only 25% of educators feel confident of using AI in classrooms, because they say most of the institutions in India do not have a standard AI policy in place. Right? So we are reeling into this world. If we talk about industry skills, 86% of learners today are making their decision of how to choose a university program based on the industry skills that a program delivers. And they measure it through industry micro-credentials. 92% of Indian employers value a candidate who demonstrates skills through a professional certificate or industry micro-credential over a candidate who does not. And the ability to demonstrate AI capabilities, the premium is 30% more, 30% higher salary than an average salary in a recruiter's world, right? So these are all the parameters in which organizations today, institutions today are operating, and people who succeed are responding to these and fast.
Very interesting data points. And I think, as you said, the students are the ones who are deciding how learning is happening also today, because they have so much available to them. Access has become so easy and they can find answers so quickly. So I think institutions need to kind of evolve around those expectations that they are coming up with. Great thoughts, Trustee. Thank you for answering that. How about you, Dr. Ganesh? On ground, as you implement reforms like NEP and others also, what have your biggest learnings been in translating, say, policy into practice?
Well, I think that this is a big challenge because
Yeah.
it's policy is one thing, but then executing it and making it real is a totally different ballgame altogether. So one thing that Prashasti has she's been alluding to is the flexibility, especially the adaptive learning, personalizing learning at scale. This is one of the things that technology can enable, right? I mean, definitely you need technology for this, and I think that is going to be the norm going forward, because as we understand the learner's needs, we can adapt the teaching and learning content towards that. But then, in terms of NEP, what we are actually finding here is, yes, there is flexibility. It's good for the student, but it's also like we have to have a right planning. I mean, we have to go back to the drawing board and start planning our programs or enrollments, because at a very granular level. I'll just explain this in a little detailed manner. There is an option for student to go out and come into the system depending on his life's needs, right? I mean, after the first year, if the student finds for whatever reason he has to take a break, then he can go out and then come back after a year. Now, this is actually going to put an enormous strain on our system, because like we have to understand what the demand is for every year in our institution. Demand planning becomes a very complex process. So executing the flexibility that is articulated in the NEP system, that requires a lot more planning from our end, which is something that we are still learning. I wouldn't say that we have mastered it, but we are still at a very nascent stage, I would say. And the second thing about a very good thing that NEP stresses is multidisciplinary learning, right?
Yeah.
What we find in educational institutions, the knowledge is all in silos, right? I mean, we still think of computer science as separate and electronics as separate and mechanical engineering as a separate thing. In fact, the departments, even the physical departments, are so far off that they hardly meet with each other. Where is the question of integrating that knowledge all together in one curriculum? So now the in thing they are talking about is cyber physical systems. So you have to combine IoT, you have to combine data science, AI, computer science, and mechanical engineering. We are still having problems in delivering, the mechanical engineering curriculum itself in terms of the rigor that the world-class institutions are doing. So yes, this is another problem I think that we have to solve. Again, we are now discussing all these things, and we have just started introducing degree programs which are multidisciplinary. For example, our electronics department, we were the first ones to start an IoT under Bharatiyar University in our Arts and Science College. When we started this, the university was giving us, was asking a lot of right and tough questions to us. They are asking, like, how can you embed computer science in electronics? Because electronics has a different way of thinking and everything. So IoT is a combination of both. And then finally, we had to come up and we prepared a lot of material, and then we presented. And finally, they agreed, and they even appreciated it. And after that, that curriculum has been rolled to other affiliated institutions. So we are at this stage right now of multidisciplinary learning. Now, embedding that into fine-grained curriculum, that is going to take a lot more time. We are all talking about it.
Yeah. How about you, Trustee? As we look ahead, how do you see degrees, micro credentials, and AI, all of that coming together to reshape learning pathways?
Jasmine, I always have that outside in perspective when I talk about higher education. Very close to where Senthil is, there's an Apple manufacturing plant run by Foxconn. iPhones are being manufactured by robots. The problem statement that the government gave us, we also work with the government of Tamil Nadu. The problem statement that the government gave us was the industry is demanding engineers, mechanical engineers, who can work with smart manufacturing systems like a clean shop driven by robots, right? My institutions are not producing those engineers. Second is there's a huge electric vehicle movement in the country. Tamil Nadu wants to excel at it. We don't have enough EV engineers in the system to furnish that talent demand. So how do we do that? At the same time, in a Coursera survey, 91% of students said, I want industry micro-credentials as part of my degree program, and I wanted credit bearing. So my university should mandatorily include them into my learning credits. Because the employer is saying that credit bearing micro-credentials are better validation of my learning than a free moving sort of a system, right? The third interesting factor here is we also have to be concerned about academic integrity in this time of everything AI. We are already dealing with deep fake in, market surveillance or any or defense systems or wherever you may. So we don't want to get into academia also like this, which means there needs to be an integrity suite. There needs to be credit aligned credentials. There have to be vetted global certifying authorities. And institutional governance should be such that you can drill down to a power of one. So you can look at it program level, you can look at it from student level also. And you have to do this every day of your life, which requires a lot of technical flexibility and agility as part of the institutional architecture. So let's solve it for what the industry is asking for. Let's solve for what the financial investment priorities of the country are, where our talent pipelines should be moving. And third, let's also solve for interdisciplinary learning and data-driven learning within the institutions. And all of this needs to be solved at once. Right. So I think that's where the main mindset shift is, which is why I always say that degrees of the future are going to be Lego blocks. All the foundations will be controlled by the faculty because you want to develop lifelong learners. You want to develop good human beings. You also want to develop critical and righteous human beings, because responsible AI is a theme which is now getting into schools also, let alone institutions of higher education, right? But there will be a lot of industry endorsed learning that needs to come in. It will take a long time if it has to wait for faculty to progress at that level. But if we see faculty and technology partners as collaborators, it can happen faster. I think that's the inflection point we are at, Yasmin.
That's so interesting the way we are. I think the best part here is that we are all ready for the change. It's just that how we all come together, be it industry, academia, ed tech, all of it together. And make sure that we build that for the future, be it curriculum, through mindset, through our faculty development, all of that together, I think is very critical. So now coming to the closing question, which will be a quick rapid fire for both the leaders. If I had to ask you one question, it would be, what's that one mindset shift that institutions must adopt today to truly future-proof their learners? One mindset shift. Dr. Senthil, let's hear from you first.
All right. So I would go with what Prashasti was telling before this, in her last question, is like we can't solve we can't solve all the problems by ourselves, right? So we have to pick and choose where we are strong, and then we have to partner with uh, external partners for giving a holistic education. That is already happening right now in different guises, in many shapes and forms among institutions. But increasingly, I think this is the way to go forward. And the sage on the stage method is not going to work at all going forward. It is going to be, as I strongly believe that faculty will increasingly become facilitators, and where they will definitely not know all the answers. In fact, students might know a lot more in certain areas than the faculty. But the faculty's role there is how to bring the students and the curriculum and the assessments, how do they actually put all these things together to make the teaching and learning process effective? So two things. One is no sage on the stage. And the second thing is we have to be open to partner.
Lovely. I love that. No stage on the stage and be open to partner. Trustee, what about you?
I think refocus from teaching to research, so that applied learning can be brought into the classrooms and faculty time can be freed up to do more value addition, to the knowledge and scientific community. That is supremely important, and that can only happen, as Senthil was mentioning, if we partner.
Yeah.
And the second piece, which is close to my heart, is institution-wide capacity building in responsible AI. Let's be ready before it hits us big time. How do we empower learners and administrators and faculty to understand the functioning of a responsible AI ecosystem?
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. I think on that note, that was all the time we had for this conversation. But thank you, Dr. Ganesh and Trustee, for a very, very insightful conversation. I think it's a no-brainer that the future of higher education will belong to institutions that are not just evolving, but are intentionally redesigning themselves around skills, around industry relevance, and continuous learning. That's going to be the future. So thank you so much, Trustee. Thank you, Dr. Ganesh, for joining us for this conversation.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure, Yasmin. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.